Hello to all our listeners tuning in for our Leaders in Lockdown special, asking how Cornwall will recover from the coronavirus pandemic. Taking your questions is leader of Cornwall Council, Julian German. Julian, welcome. We know that Cornwall, like the rest of the UK, has been hit hard by the pandemic in terms of the loss of jobs, loss of income and loss of business. So before we take questions from listeners, can we first ask how much in pounds and pence has the coronavirus pandemic cost Cornwall?
Well, there's been a huge cost, and we've received lots of different monies from government. So quite a lot of the money we've received has gone straight back out to businesses to support them through the pandemic. We've got a high number of people on furlough in Cornwall, and so all of that support's been really welcome. But unfortunately, we haven't had as much support as we would like. So there's a number of our businesses, in particular, in Cornwall, the freelance economy, that haven't had financial support. And in terms of what the council has done to support residents, and the loss of income that we've had through, for example, leisure services being closed, we're short in the funding for that. So around 10 million that we've expended that we haven't had back from government, despite their claims for local councils to do all that you need to at the beginning of the pandemic.
Sure. And moving on to questions from our listeners. So several of our Facebook followers have asked about the recent 4.99% rise in council tax. Colin said, given that a large number of jobs in Cornwall rely on hospitality and tourism, and the fact that the last year has seen a reduction in work for everyone, why do you feel it's right to push through one of, if not the largest, rises in council tax at a time when most are struggling anyway?
Yeah, so it was a really, really tough decision. But if you look across the southwest, all councils apart from Dorset, which has recently become a unitary and is equalising its level of council tax, all councils have put forward a 4.99% rise. So that just goes to show that all councils are really facing this challenge, really struggling. And why it's important that we have that resource, that you fund your council to deliver the services that you need, is because that's precisely what we're trying to do. We're trying to deliver adult social care, that range of hundreds of services that people rely upon to keep you safe and well. From Cornwall's perspective, we've increased the amount of money that we have for those in hardship and for those that receive council tax support. So those that are the poorest in our community, they'll receive an additional £75 discount on their council tax this year, which means that their council tax won't be going up because the increase won't be of that magnitude for them. And for those people that are above that threshold but struggling, then there's a hardship fund that people can apply to. So what we're trying to do is get the resource in so that we can deliver services that people really rely upon, and for those that can't afford to pay the council tax, that there's support there for them. But there are people who can afford to pay, and we're asking them to do so.
Sure. So Falmouth mum Katie is one of several parents who got in touch about education. She asks, what additional financial help will schools receive to support the work staff are doing to ensure our children are educated to a high standard in these difficult times?
So most schools now are run by councils. So when we saw academies happen, trusts form, this was all part of the government agenda to remove schools from council's control. So that is a question for the academy, the trust that your child goes to. The council doesn't directly fund schools anymore.
Okay, so Sarah lives in Camborne and she says there's been no financial help for businesses which were set up in 2019. They aren't entitled to anything. What support will the council be giving to local businesses like these?
Yeah, so those businesses didn't have a year's trading, and now they're getting into that position where they have got a year's trading. So they're becoming eligible for support. And also through the additional restrictions grant, we've been trying to support some of those businesses.
Joe lives near Redruth and is worried about the pressure on our local police force and NHS when the inevitable influx of tourists arrive this summer. She asks what measures will be put in place to preempt a crisis.
Yeah, so we've seen just in the last week what's happened in Italy with a further lockdown, and it is a real concern. So Cornwall Council doesn't have the ability to close borders and stop people coming to Cornwall. So what we're trying to do is make sure that businesses are operating appropriately. So we visit a number of businesses, a large number of businesses every week. We've had enforcement teams, people like environmental health officers, all of the time during the pandemic. Last week, there were 28 enforcement notices issued against businesses for not taking the correct precautions. So really important that we keep on doing that, and that we all encourage one another to be doing the right thing. Last summer, we saw the weather has an impact on the virus. We saw many people coming to Cornwall and not a rise in the virus. This summer we'll have had the vaccinations as well. So hopefully we'll be in a better place, but we absolutely need to keep following the public health guidance, us as residents, but also the people that come and visit us need to respect the place as well.
So sticking with summer visitors, Jane from Newquay wants to know, are you doing anything to stop farmers, etc., with spare land setting up pop-up campsites, which could lead to Cornwall being totally overcrowded during the summer? She's heard it's happening because of a lot of registered sites and accommodation are fully booked, and she's worried about the impact on local facilities and traffic.
Yeah, it's happening because government have allowed it. So in many places, you are allowed to have a 28-day campsite, but not all places. So, for example, the coast along the Roseland has an Article 4 direction where you weren't allowed anything. And this has become a concern, not just in Cornwall, but in areas of outstanding natural beauty in national parks in particular. The government so normally those areas have higher level of planning protection, but government has said 56-day campsites can happen anywhere. So we don't have powers to say, no, you can't have a campsite. What we will be able to do is check that they're, if they open, that they're operating appropriately, and we'll have powers to close them down if they're not following the public health guidance, for example.
Our next question is from Lisa from Porth. She's concerned about reports that lots of money's been paid out to second homeowners who registered their properties as holiday lets to avoid paying council tax and then benefited from 10k business grants for COVID. She asks, 1, what is being done to close this loophole? And 2, will the council consider making sure all second homeowners pay full council tax regardless of how many homes they own?
So second homeowners are charged full council tax, so there's no discount for second homeowners in Cornwall. In other authorities they do. If we had the power to charge more than full council tax, so 150% double council tax, then I expect Cornwall Council would be interested in that. That would be something that all councillors would need to vote upon, but I expect it's something that a lot of councillors would support, but we don't have the powers to do that. So there's the distinction between second homes and businesses, and if someone has a second home and they're registered as a business, it's no longer a second home, it's a holiday business. And if, as your listener was suggesting, that people have just registered their second home as a business but not operating it as a business, then they're committing fraud, and they should be reported to HMRC. If you live in my area as a local councillor, I would be happy to do that on your behalf. Give that information to your local councillor, or do it yourself. because that's dishonest. It's not right. But if there is a legitimate holiday business, then many Cornish people own holiday properties, and that is their living. And we all want to see local businesses being helped out during the pandemic. So if it's a second home, they're paying full council tax. If it was a business that you don't believe is a legitimate business, then please report it to HMRC.
Sure. So also on housing, Nigel from Penzance wants to know, given the policy of non-eviction of rental tenants during the pandemic, does the council believe there will be a housing crisis when the ban is lifted? And do they have the accommodation available to help these people?
Well, housing is a hugely challenging issue for Cornwall in general. So I think that will become even more challenging. We're hearing stories already of private sector rental accommodation getting huge numbers of applicants when it becomes available. So it's a real concern. What's the council doing about that? Well, we're the top delivering authority in the country for delivering affordable housing. We have been for the last 2 years, and for the couple of years before that, we were in the top 3. So there's been a huge focus by the council on ensuring that there is local needs, affordable housing for local residents. What more can we do? Well, there's a whole host of challenges around that, isn't there? Such as we talked earlier about the campsites and spoiling the countryside. Well, how much development can Cornwall take? That's a really interesting question. From 1830 to 1960, the population of Cornwall was around 340,000. In the last 60 years, we've seen it rise to around 560,000. So we've had a huge increase over the last 50 years, but equally global population has increased massively over that time as well. So this is the big challenge for Cornwall and for the council. And as I say, we've tried to grab that challenge with both hands and have made Cornwall the leading authority for delivering affordable housing.
So Karen from St Ives is worried about rubbish and recycling. She wants to know, when will the tips be able to have all cars on the same day again?
Well, I'm always amazed at how much love there is for some people of visiting the tip. It doesn't seem unreasonable to me that we don't visit the tip every day, but it is a little bit of a faff in terms of is it the right day, and hopefully that will be taken off in the not too distant future. But at the moment, we're still seeing with the good weather and lockdown, people doing lots of DIY, people all heading towards the tip. So we're managing that, and the reason that we're doing that is to make it better for people. The queues aren't so long, and that you can have a better use of the site when you're there. So please bear with us, and I'm sure that as we get back to not being at home all of the time, then the pressure will ease on the household waste recycling centres, and we'll lift that restriction.
Hi, my name is Emily Stevenson and I'm the co-founder of Beach Guardian. Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask some important questions today. My question is, through lockdown, we have seen people become more connected to nature and rely on nature every single day. We've also seen through our work at Beach Guardian, going into schools in Cornwall, that there are children in Cornwall that have never been to the beach. So what we'd like to ask is if Cornwall Council has any plans to support schools and other organisations to support and provide outdoor learning opportunities to school children in Cornwall.
Yeah, so I think we do a huge amount to support that. I was fortunate enough to be at the UK's Advisory Council for COP26 yesterday, and spoke about people like Emily and the fantastic work that NGOs are doing in Cornwall but around the country to tackle climate change. So we absolutely need to celebrate that. It's a shocking thing that the residents inland in Cornwall haven't been to the beach, and we need to support people to get out into the environment. But Cornwall absolutely isn't all just about beaches as much as we might love them. There's fantastic inland locations in Cornwall, and one of the projects that we've done over the last couple of years has been about turning disused spaces in our towns into pollinator habitats, nice wildlife spots that residents and the wildlife can enjoy together. So getting out doesn't need to be about getting to the beach. There's lots of learning that can be done on your doorstep wherever you are.
And just finally then, is there anything else that you'd like to add or say to reassure people that Cornwall will recover from coronavirus?
Well, I think what I'd like to say is Cornwall is an absolutely fantastic community. We knew that. So collectively as Cornwall and all of our individual communities, we've really seen people rallying together. We've seen a council move from last May with the beginning of lockdown to 5,000 people in offices to an agility that was astounding and not always associated with councils. We've seen council staff that are in housing out delivering PPE. We've seen firefighters driving ambulances. We've seen people do all sorts of amazing things within the council and within our communities. So it's that community spirit, that one and all mentality that will absolutely see us recover. But key for me in terms of recovering well is understanding that we do need to tackle climate change and the ecological crisis. And we've got great plans around that, but we can only achieve those plans if government enables local authorities to do so, if they give us the powers and the resources to make a difference in our communities. We'll only get people into those new jobs that we're seeing emerge now if we've got powers around skills training, and that we can really work with businesses as well as colleges to provide the right courses for the jobs for the future. So absolutely, there's fantastic innovation, fantastic community spirit in Cornwall, and we will come through. But it has been really tough, and we should also take a moment to remember the over 500 people that have died in Cornwall over the last year, the horrendous impact that has had on individuals, families, communities, and think about them, and then redouble our efforts to create a better Cornwall.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.